Welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 65. I'm your host, Basa J. Wade, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. This week, we're just going to be talking about the PQ season. So it's going to be CC going on from April 13th to May 5th. So we're just going to be discussing what we think is going to happen during those PQ seasons and discuss which decks we think are going to be viable for this season. But before we do that, how was your week, Yuki?
My week has been pretty mediocre. I've just been, to be honest, I've just been sick over basically like the whole Easter weekend. I feel like I got back, I did like one or two things, and then I was just like, oh, now I'm sick. So I just basically been sick from like Thursday until now, which is Tuesday. I think I'm mostly better, but still not quite 100%. Also, just like while I was sick, I was just showering and then I pulled my back somehow. Like I wasn't even like bending over or lifting anything or like crouching down. I was just like standing in the shower and I was just like, oh, my back. That didn't feel very good. And like my back is still a little bit sore from that. I'm just like, okay, like that's cool. I guess I'm just getting old or something. I don't know.
I was gonna say that. I think you're just getting old, Yuki.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aging. Oh no.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know. This week hasn't been great. I feel like I've just been like sleeping a lot and not doing very much. I sorted my collection a little bit yesterday. That was kind of good, I guess.
That's insane. I need to sort my collection soon. I have no idea what I own and what I don't own anymore. I don't even know if I need to go pick up cards for this PQ season soon.
Yeah, I sorted all my M's because my M's used to be just kind of like in disarray. Like they were like some of them were sorted, most of them weren't sorted. There was like M's in a bunch of different piles. So I sorted all of that, and I've previously sorted my commons and rares, but I had to put away some cards. Like I kind of like like everything's organized, and then you pull a bunch of cards and you build some decks, and you have like extra cards that you might take to events. And after a while, you're like, they have like 3 piles of cards that aren't sorted. So I had to go through that.
That's super fair. I'm like, my pile of M's is like so big right now. I don't even know what's in there. One thing I did find recently was Command and Conquer, so that's a good find. It's an extra like what, $100 card right now to find and be like, oh, sick! I didn't know I owned this extra copy of Command and Conquer.
It's definitely a nice find. How would you like to organize your collection?
Typically like to just organize it by class, for, at least for the
Mm-hmm.
M's. All my
Mm-hmm.
commons and rares, I actually use a 4 row, and I like just sort the whole set by collector number, and so then I know so I know if like somebody asks for like a playset of a specific common or rare, I can just like go to that set and pull it by looking at the collector number, which I found the fastest way to like pull cards if I actually ever need them. But the Majestics, I don't own like thousands and thousands of them, so it's kind of easier to just have them by class. So when I go like, oh, I want to play a ninja, I just go look at my ninja pile of M's and I can be like, oh damn, I'm missing one M, I need to go buy this.
That sounds super fair. Yeah. My collection's kind of similar. I have all my M's separated by like class and then talent and then alphabet. And then for the other cards, the rares and commons, it's just by set. And then I guess I technically don't do it by collector number, but it's like I think it's like functionally very similar. I do by set, by class, by alphabet, but I think like in practice that ends up probably being very close to collector number. So
Yeah, I think most sets were actually by alphabet with the collector number,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
then I think heavy hitters isn't by collector numbers and by alphabet, which threw me off during deck building in like Hartford, where usually I like sort it by collector number, and then it's like already organized. Like the deck list sheet is already organized by collector's number usually. But then this time I sorted by collector's number, look, and then went to go mark down my like somebody else's pool, and then it's just like all over the place, and I'm just like, how is this organized? Like, what is this collector numbers based off of? It's just like, man, it threw me off so much and wasted like extra 5 minutes of time to try and like register my deck. It was like, it kind of felt awful, but then I got used to it now.
Yeah, I've always just kind of organized by alphabet. I can understand collector's number. I don't know. For some reason, alphabetical is like easier in my brain, but
Alphabetical is way harder. I have to sing the ABC song every single time I look at a card and be like, is a G after H, J, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J?
I have to do a little bit of that, but it's not too bad.
Oh, mostly when it comes to the later letters like M and N or like, S T's, like all those ones. Oh my god, I don't know where they land in the alphabet.
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, the set number is like a thing that is on the card, but I think it's like small enough and at the bottom, and I don't really look at it. So I just like, I'm like never like aware of like the set number, whereas I'm like aware of the alphabet. And I also feel like if I ever wanted to like pull a deck and I have the list on Fabry, it's like easier for me to work by alphabet than have to like enlarge the image and look at each set number. But I don't know. I think functionally they're like very, very similar. So
I see. That's fair. That's fair. I don't know if this is still a thing on Talishar, but before on Talishar, at least when I used to play a little bit, Mask of Many Faces required you to name a card. The naming a card was bugged, so you couldn't actually name a card. But the only way for you to make that card functional was to actually put in the source code for the card, which Talishar used to use the set number.
I
So
see.
what you actually had to do was when you wanted to name Surging Strike, you just needed to put in the the set number for Surging Strike, and then it'll recognize that set number as the card name. So when you played like, is it Descending Gust Wave that
Yeah.
so if you were like looking for a Surging Strike, you put the Surging Strike set number in, and then you played, and then it would work with all the combo cards. And I actually just like at one point had all the set codes, sorry, the set numbers for all the ninja cards memorized because it was faster to do it with Mask of Many Faces for outsiders.
I didn't know that. Viewers might not know this. I don't actually use Talishar for testing that much. It started using it more, but for a long time, a lot of my group is like, I guess, has been playing the game long enough that we got used to Tabletop Simulator. And I think a lot of people prefer it within my, I think like my exact circle. I actually don't know any other groups that really use Tabletop Simulator all that much still, but my group uses it like probably 50% of the time. More and more people are using Talishar, and I'm pretty comfortable using either. But yeah, I don't know. I still feel like lost when I play Talishar. I'm like I'm not very good at tracking the board state and stuff, but it's funny.
Yeah, if I feel like Talishar is like kind of unique in a way that you can't miss triggers and stuff like that. So I feel like Tabletop Simulator simulates a paper game of Flesh and Blood better, but I do understand how Talishar is just like, you don't have to load Tabletop Simulator and you don't have to learn all the shortcut keys to play it on Tabletop Simulator. And Talishar exists now. We're not 4 years ago or 3 years ago when Talishar didn't exist and we had to rely on somebody making a tabletop simulator for Flesh and Blood anymore.
No, for sure. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's just something. I feel like Tabletop Simulator has like this awful learning curve where you're learning it and you're just like, this feels so bad. But when I think that when you get fast enough at tabletop, it's like fairly comparable to Talishar. There's things that are like better or worse on each. Like Illusionist and Dash is like miserable on Talishar in my opinion because of all the priority windows and like all the clicks, whereas like you can shortcut it like you would in paper on tabletop, which is nice.
Yeah, I agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah, but then like Talishar taking care of triggers and like, well, the shuffling's pretty fast in tabletop. That's not hard, but yeah, there's trade-offs both ways. One of the things I like about tabletop a lot though is that you can, it's like relatively easy to like fix things. If you're like, I want to block with this card instead of this card, you literally like pick up one card, put the other card away. Or you're like, oh, I played too fast. I needed to block with a card because I can't use this. I'm just going to block with this card. Say I block with this card and increase my life by 3. Whereas like in Talishar, it's always like, now we got to rewind and redo the turn, and Dash needs to load her pistol a bunch of times. And it's just like, oh, the rewinds kill me. But I don't know. Talishar, good platform. Most people play on Talishar. I don't blame them. I think if I hadn't learned tabletop and if I didn't have people that are just like very very stubborn about playing tabletop, I just play Talishar. I'm getting pretty used to it these days. It's honestly not bad. It's just different.
I think my one biggest thing that I don't like Talishar over tabletop would be I always get confused on my pitch stack on Talishar, but I
Yes.
don't get confused on my pitch stack on Tabletop Simulator. And I
Same.
think it's just the visual difference of like how thick the deck is, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that like for me, like if I like physically order the cards and see them go to the bottom, it somehow feels different than when Talishar is just like, here's 3 cards, click the order. Like I know that like functionally it's kind of the same, but like in my brain it just doesn't register. I also think a lot of like permanents in Talishar don't register. Like in Talishar, people like have attacked me with Nerve Scalpel and try to block, and I'm like, why does my sink below block for 3? And they're like, nerve scalpel. I'm like, oh, I don't see the nerve scalpel on the combat chain. So it just like doesn't exist. Like I just cannot.
I see. I see.
I cannot like understand that I got attacked by a nerve scalpel because I don't actually see the nerve scalpel on the board, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's just you just get used to it. It's like I always miss like what's happening on the top left hand corner of the screen on
Mm-hmm.
Talishar, which has like all of the passives and like the floating effects on the game, and I just like always miss it for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, yeah. I find a lot of the tracking in Talishar tough, but you know, it's a free platform. It's pretty good. It's very it's very easy to learn too overall, despite some of the like occasional pain points.
And I guess if some of the listeners don't know where to access it, if you just like Google Talishar, it should come up. I think it's talishar.net if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Made up, yeah, talishar.net. Yep.
Yeah, honestly, if you are like trying to play test for something or just like want to play some casual games, kind of an insane platform because you can play against randoms too.
Yeah, you can play against randoms. You can play against friends. You can play any deck. You don't need to own the cards. This is a nice way to like try something. If you're like, hey, I might want to build Hatchet Story because it did well at the PT. Do I want to play this deck? You can try it out without investing a whole bunch of money, getting all your cards together, or sleeving it up, and then being like, oh, I played this deck twice and I realized I don't like it. No, not saying that that will be the case, but it can save you from situations like that.
Oh yeah, I guess before we move on, you wanna do a Patreon shout out?
Yeah, that sounds good. So thank you so much to all of our patrons. Honestly, can't say thank you enough. People have been really, really incredible. You can check us out on patreon.com/on the bobble. Yeah, we just really appreciate everybody who helps out with the show. And we also appreciate all of our listeners who, don't get back monetarily, but tune in and enjoy the show and maybe talk with their friends about it. Thank you for all your support. We couldn't be doing this without you. And yeah, you can kind of expect some more Patreon updates in the coming weeks. We're going to be talking about Dromai living legending soon, so the meta is going to be changing, but you can expect like updates to the KO list and sideboard plans for it and things like that on the Patreon. So if you're interested in sort of like more, I guess, like specific content, you can check it out on the Patreon.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Then let's move on and talk about the Pro Quest that's coming up. Looks like PQ season is gonna be from April 13th to May 5th. We're recording on what is this, April 2nd right now, so it's not this weekend for us, but the following weekend. By the time this episode's up, it will be next week. So each hero that gets a Pro Quest win this season will get 3 points. We keep on talking about Dromai LLing. She's at 996 points. So if she gets 2 wins out of all the Pro Quests around the world, she's gonna be LL'd. And looks like they changed the LL requirements or when heroes rotate to the Friday of each week. And then they check on the Monday beforehand. So basically what that means is on week 1, if Dromai has 2 PQ wins, she won't be legal for the weekend after. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've had this change for a while, but I think this is the first PQ season where it's relevant. Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so.
Well, it's the first PQ season where somebody has like more than 990 points, and it's probably going to rotate on week 1.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean by like relevant is like we've had this rule in place and like theoretically it can happen, but I don't know if we've had a hero rotate in the middle of the season. I think we've had it happen in Blitz, but not CC.
I see, I see. Don't I am so far disconnected, I guess, from Blitz. I didn't even know
Same.
Kano was LL'd until you told me like a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I occasionally hear about it from people, but I think like quite a few heroes LL'd in Blitz. Like I think like Kano's gone. I think Ira's gone or very close to gone. Like a bunch of like the mainstays of Blitz are just like recently LL'd, is my understanding. And now I hear that like Reiner is really good. I'm not sure. I don't really play that much Blitz either, to be honest.
Oh yeah. Oh, it looks like in Blitz Dash and Briar is about to LL.
Nah, no, that makes sense.
And I also completely forgot that Briar is still legal in Blitz.
Mm-hmm.
That means Rosetta Thorn's legal in Blitz, isn't it?
I assume so.
Crazy. Okay, well, but either way, like the living legend system is actually kind of cool and unique to this game. So it's kind of exciting that Dromai is going away. I don't like playing against Dromai, at least when I play my fatigue dash lists. It's not really fun to play against the Dromai that knows how to beat me. It feels kind of unwinnable sometimes, unless I put like 5 extra poppers in my deck. In that case, the game becomes close. Not even good for me. It just gets closer. I'm kind of excited for Dromai to be leaving, so like I don't have to be like, oh man, do I have my 18 poppers in my deck that I need for my dash deck?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that Dromai leaving is something that a lot of people are looking forward to. She's been shaping the format for quite a while now, and I think it'll be a pretty big shift to have her depart. I'm kind of an illusionist fan, even when I don't play illusionist. I often like the games against her, but I also know that there's like certain decks that just don't really get to exist or really struggle into her that will, get a chance to breathe a little bit and hopefully have their time to be a little more relevant. So that's exciting and good for the game. And I mean, we have another illusionist coming out, what, in 2 months or so with Part the Misfail. So having a break from illusionist seems okay. And theoretically, there's still an illusionist. There's still Prism in the game, so it's not even like there's no illusionists around.
Yeah, and if I feel like finally Prism is starting to see the light of day, right? Like people has started figuring out what a good Prism list looked like too. So it's getting better and harder to beat.
Yeah, I think so. I think with Luminaris, Angel's Glow, the doors kind of opened up on that deck a little bit, and she got more relevant. And I think with Dromai leaving, we'll talk about the decks that improve the most later, but I think that Prism is one of them. The Prism Dromai matchup was a particularly bad one, and so yeah, I expect to see some Prism going forward.
I guess at least in our local area, we don't actually have a PQ on the first week, if I'm not mistaken. What are you planning on playing? Because we know Droma is gonna be leaving on week one, most likely at least. Very unlikely for us to have a chance to play with Dromai. What are you still gonna be playing KO, or are you gonna try to move on to like somebody else?
I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. I think that Kyo is still a pretty good choice and something that I could just play because I'm familiar with it. And I think it's hard for that deck to ever be bad. I think he does get a little bit worse though, with Dromai leaving, since I think that the Dromai matchup was a pretty decent one for you if you understood it well. I think it was like largely a skill matchup, but I think if like both sides are playing very optimally and have like KO has like a deck that is teched well for Dromai with lots of go again, I think that KO does have a little bit of an advantage in that matchup. So I think that leaving will be hard, and I also think that with KO leaving, with Dromai leaving, some of KO's bad matchups might be a little more relevant. Like the Warriors are traditionally not good into Dromai, and they get a little bit of a boost. So I think KO is like still a good choice, but I'm not. For last season, it felt like yes, I'm definitely playing KO for RTNs, and now and for PT, it's like yeah, pretty solidly KO, and now I'm like maybe I'm KO, but I could also see playing something else.
Are you gonna put a lot of strength into this PQ season, or are you gonna kind of take it easy? Because this one, oh, I guess we didn't even talk about this. This PQ queues for Pro Tour Amsterdam, so that's in Europe. It's gonna be far from most of us, and that's in North America, right?
Yeah, it is a bit of a further PQ to travel to. I know some of the locals are not so motivated because of that, which makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna end up playing a bunch of PQs, kind of no matter what. Ali is actually coming up to visit, and she wants to grind PQs and try to qualify for Amsterdam. So I will also be grinding PQs as a result, which should be fun. Honestly, I like PQ season, but I personally don't really like. I should be qualified on Elo, even though I lost like a decent chunk at PT. I lost 80, I think, but I'm still like top 30 or something. So I don't think. Yeah, I'm not too worried about getting the invite, and I think I will be going to Amsterdam kind of regardless. But a gold foil would help with the travel fees if I can get there. That being said, I've won one PQ ever, so I don't exactly have high hopes of PQs being like a big plus EV event for me. I feel like I usually just lose money at PQs if I'm being honest, or like maybe break even, like top eight and you break even. That's probably like usually what happens more realistically.
That's fair. That's fair. I feel like I scam a lot of people in PQs. It's just like, oh, I'm like playing this really obscure card in my deck because I was too lazy to go find something better, and then it happens to like one out or this like random deck out of nowhere because like, oh, I'm playing like Yellow Oasis Respite because I was too lazy to go find some other good card from my deck and I played against Kano. Like, things like that happen a lot for me. Yeah, like the last PQ that I won against you in the finals, you ran so bad against me that I felt kind of bad that you lost that game.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I also ran so bad into you in like the Starvo meta. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, that was the Lexi versus Starvo when I had the incomplete Starvo deck, made a decklist error, got my IFP2 penalty in top 8. My opponent makes a huge misplay in the first round of top 8 that lets me win that game into top 4, where my opponent makes a different misplay playing Reinhardt and accidentally discards Beast Within to his Reckless Swing while I'm at 1 life and they're at 1 life. So I win on the stack. And then against Yuki, I play Starvo into Lexi, and you draw triple three of a kind or something like that, or triple Art of War at the first 3 turns of the game.
Yeah, I had like a bunch of Art of Wars and three of a kinds, and I remember I'm just like, I have to play these, and my chances of finding something's like pretty good because I can draw so many cards. Like I think I had like an Art of War in hand, then I played like a three of a kind, and then I Art of Warred from Arsenal, and I'm just like, oh, I can't do anything, and I just like spent all like half the good cards in my deck, and then I like narrowly got fatigued.
Yeah, yeah. I think I won. I like barely fatigued you out by like I'm at like 1 or 2 life, and you ran out of cards just on the dot kind of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. You usually do pretty well at PQs, and I feel like I'm pretty good at top eighting and then losing somewhere between top eight and finals.
Yeah, well, it is still difficult to win an event, right? Like even if it's a 25-player event, 30-player event, it's difficult to win an event, and like you have to go 3-0 in the last 3 rounds of the tournament, no matter what, to win the tournament. So
Yeah, and sometimes you can just like have a bad matchup or draws don't line up. So PQs are hard. I always get like confused because I see some people on social media and they're like, I got my fifth gold foil this season. And I'm just like, what? Like, how is this possible? Like, I've won one PQ lifetime. Like, how do you have five this season? I don't understand. I guess some people are just built different. I don't know. I've never. Yeah, it's impressive.
that's fair. That's fair. Okay, I guess let's move on and talk about for our current PQ season. What do you think the meta is gonna look like after Dromai leaves? Because I feel like the meta for week 1 is gonna be very close to what we saw during the PT, with like a lot of like KOs and a couple of the Dromai players being like a strong contender to win. And after Dromai leaves, what do you think the best deck in the format's gonna be?
Yeah, I think there's a few candidates. I feel like the natural starting point for everybody is going to be Hatchet Story or some kind of dual wield warrior. Like we saw two Hatchet Stories in top eight of PT. Maximilian Klein make it all the way to the finals and almost beat a Dromai actually on Hatchet Story. which is pretty crazy. That was like a very, very intense game. And then we also saw, I think it was like a Sabres Kasai piloted by Matthew Dilks take out the Calling. So I think that like the dual wield warriors were decks that I feel like people were maybe a little low on going into the weekend, especially Dory. Like it maybe wasn't so much on people's radar, but did very well this weekend and have a pretty solid KO matchup and have had to like tech for the Dromai matchup. Like I think that was like one of the big breakthroughs was that people figured out the Dromai matchup and ways to beat it. But I feel like with Dromai leaving, like it kind of has to be good for Dory, right? Like Dory doesn't have to play like Cleave and like probably doesn't need to have like amnesias in their deck anymore just to have random poppers. So I feel like the dual wield warriors are like in a pretty good place. So what are Dory's bad matchups is sort of like the next stepping stone from there. And I think her bad matchups are kind of Kano and Victor. Those are the decks most well positioned to deal with the dual wield warriors. So I think that those decks will be represented. And then I think that KO is still going to be good because I think KO has a very good matchup into Victor and a pretty solid matchup into Kano. And the Dory matchup isn't fantastic, but I think it's probably somewhere around 40-60. Maybe you can there might be ways to tech for that. I'm sort of still working on that matchup a little bit right now, but I think that KO is still a good choice as well. So I'm kind of like high on all four of those decks: Victor, KO, Kano, Dory, which kind of surprisingly isn't all that different than what we saw at the PT and the Calling. Those are like very much the decks that were represented, minus Dromai, of course. I think the biggest difference is that I think KO is like relatively a little bit worse, and I think the Warriors are probably relatively a little bit better.
Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. Well, KO is kind of hard to be a bad deck, right? Because of like the raw numbers that deck presents every other turn is like 14 with like 4 cards or something like that. It's like those are good numbers to be working with. So I kind of don't see how KO can ever be a bad deck in, at least modern day Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, it's something like KO is like a little bit worse, but like the thing about KO is like KO's bad matchups are never going to be that bad because some of the like when the deck does what it wants to do, it's just super unfair. Like your like some of your Blood Rush turns, some of your like Savage Feast turns, or even just like Wild Ride, Claw, Swing Big is just like so insane. It's like 4 cards for 6 + 3 + 8. So that's 17 value plus the might. So you have like a 4 card 18 and it just takes 0 setup. You don't even need an agility. It's like it's just like very, very impressive. And I think that when KO runs well, you get like a beast within trigger too. Your agilities are rolling, you have good blood rushes. Like the deck is just super, super powerful. So I think it always has the tools to be relevant in a matchup, even if it is like for some reason not a good matchup for it. So I think that's like a very strong feature for a deck to have. And I think that KO I don't think this is going to impact our PQ season, maybe the very last week, but I think that the KO Armory deck is going to be like a huge boost in power for KO. The new chess piece is kind of crazy. It's like Temper 2, you can destroy it, and until end of turn, all your 6 cost attacks cost 1 less. So you're like often able to get like 2 resources and 2 block out of this. So it's kind of like a hardened cross trap that blocks 2. And we're like already just playing hardened cross trap. So that's like a pretty insane upgrade. I also think the blue's crazy, like the blue 1 for 5 that you can only play if you've discarded, but like you can just go like Wild Ride into that, and it's just like a blue 1 for 5 is, even if it's conditional, it's kind of broken.
Yes, yes, yes. Like most of the time, the 1 for 5s are red 1 for 5, 3 blocks, and this card just being a blue strip for no reason. Oh wow, that's like brute privilege right there.
Yeah, I think anytime you go like Wild Ride this card, or if you go like Bare Fangs with an agility this card, it's gross. One of the other really gross things you can do if you're running Tunic is you could go like Savage Feast, Claw, 1 for 5 off of a blue pitch. So that's like what, 3 cards for 11, 14, 15, 3 card 15 with a Tunic counter.
Yeah, no, that's not fair. That's not fair.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So yeah. And I don't even know, like there might be other cards in that. I think there's like some pseudo CNC effects. I don't know if that card's good, but yeah, I think KO is going to be getting some tools. But we won't really see it play out until we have the new set as well. So it's a little bit hard to know exactly how that will unfold. So like we're mostly basing KO off of the current card list, but it is worth noting that he's going to get some new tools, I think, that are relevant in that last week and will definitely be relevant as we go into Parthimus Vale.
And I guess the last question would be like, what decks were weak against Dromai in this current meta that like improves the most? Like, who do you think is gonna get the most edge for Dromai leaving right now?
I think there's a few. I mentioned at the start of the cast that Prism, I think, has a lot of room to gain. The Prism Dromai matchup is pretty terrible. Not unwinnable, but pretty terrible. And losing that bad matchup, I think, is huge for Prism. I also think that with Dromai leaving, it sort of depends like how the metagame shakes out, but I think that at least temporarily decks might have less poppers, which in turn could also make Prism better. So I think that Prism kind of naturally will get better, but I guess if she gets better enough, then people might bring in poppers for Prism again. So it's sort of, it depends how people adapt, but I think that Prism is a deck to look out for. KO matchup can be a little bit rough, but I do think that is winnable. So I don't know. I think if you can get the KO matchup to a spot where you're comfortable with, like you're pretty good into Warrior, you have a reasonable Guardian matchup, I think, and then
Reasonable, Yuki. Reasonable? No, 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 no. Not reasonable, Yuki. That matchup is outrageously bad for the Guardian players.
well, it depends.
It depends on the list, but like every time I've played Guardian into Prism, it feels unwinnable if the Prism knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I hear like such wildly different things. I like to stay away from the Guardian illusionist debates. I feel like it's like one of those like 90-90 matchups and I never know what to think.
I feel like the Guardian decks that are tech to beat Prism can do it, but like, oh my god, there's so many good Prism players, so good at like figuring out when to deploy their cards. It is just like it's the most annoying thing in the world.
It is definitely an annoying matchup. I will give you that. And yeah, maybe what I'll say is that if you want to play Prism and you feel good about your Brute and Guardian matchups, I think the deck's a good choice. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Prism kind of like she already did decently well last season, and I think she might just do even better losing one of her worst matchups. I don't know if she'll like quite take Dromai's spot, but I think she's going to be pretty solid.
That's fair. That's fair. Any other decks that you are interested in, or not interested, but like thinks that improves the most once Dromai leaves?
Uzuri probably can't really beat Dromai. I know Uzuri did beat Dromai to win a calling like a while back, so it's like technically possible, but it's that matchup is not good. It's like it's very 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 bad. That being said, I don't know if Prism is good for Uzuri either. It's probably better, but I'm not sure that it's good for Uzuri. So maybe Uzuri still has problems. I'm not sure. I'm also not sure how Uzuri does into the dual wield warriors. But losing one of your worst matchups like just has to make you automatically a lot better.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like Azuri still gets to play Codex of Frailty. Like that card is messed
Mm-hmm.
up, and it's kind of messed up how the Dromai matchup was kind of unwinnable for Azuri, even though they had Codex of Frailty. So against most fair decks, Codex is very strong. So I kind of feel that Uzuri is gonna be pretty good to playable in the next season once Dromai leaves.
I think so. I think that like if you're an Azuri fan, you should not feel bad about taking the deck. I don't know. I don't know if it's like quite top tier, but I think that it's very solid and can definitely win a PQ. It'll just kind of depend on your local meta. I think if there's like a lot of KO in your local meta, Uzuri good. Uzuri quite good into KO. So yeah, Uzuri seems pretty attractive. And then maybe the last there's kind of like two more decks I can mention. Dash, I think, has had not a fantastic matchup, regardless of whether you are boost or pistol Dash. I think that either way, the Dromai matchup is hard. And yeah, I think Dash has some pretty good tools. It's sort of tricky. I'm not exactly sure like what build of Dash is best. Like maybe you can play like a hybrid Dash. I have felt like the boost Dash is pretty good into KO. Pistol Dash is a little bit less good, but still kind of okay. Boost Dash is very good into Kano. I imagine that Pistols is pretty good into Dual Wield Warrior. You would know about that, Jay? Pistol good into Dual Wield Warrior? Surely, right?
It depends. There's a lot of factors. It kind of like my list of dash that doesn't play any attack actions. Very good into like Kasai's sabers. Not so good into Dory because I need to block. But like the Dawnblade warriors, and I haven't had that much testing into Hatchet's Dory, so I kind of don't know what that matchup is like.
Hmm.
But I just feel bad for Kasai's when I play against them with my dash deck because I don't play attack actions, so like half of their cards just don't do anything.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, so on raw math, like my pistols are better than their sabers, so I end up like fatiguing them out or plasma purifiers because that card is insane.
I think that Dash's weapons, once you get them set up, are just like the most efficient by far. And I'm not sure that even Dory, like, she gets shut down a little bit less by you, but I don't know if she can really like pressure to make you, I don't know. I'm not convinced that she like actually has enough damage to like really force the issue if you just want to block and you have some defense reactions and don't want to let her kill you. Because like even as KO, like if I just want to block and play big hands, I get to second cycle as KO reliably against Dory.
I
I just
see.
found that her like damage output is like not that scary. Maybe she brings in less D reacts against Dash. That's possible. I'm not sure.
In our locals, at least, the Dory player in our locals plays Decimator Axe against me, so it's
Mm.
a lot worse for me when that happens.
Yeah, I guess if they have a Decimator Axe hedge, it could be hard. Dory is always so tricky because it's just like, are they Sabers? Are they Dawnblade? Are they Decimator? Do they have like multiple weapons? Because some of them are playing like two of those three. I don't think you can fit all three, but I think you can fit two plans into your deck. And then like sometimes you just play against like a Dawnblade Dory, but they have like 15 defense reactions and they're actually fatiguing you anyways, but they just like want to pretend that they're going to Dawnblade you and get you to block at the start. And then if you like ever give them space, they're scary. But yeah, it's like weird. Like Dory can just like play in so many different ways and has so many different builds that it's always hard to know what to expect or like how to sideboard or how the matchup goes because it just really depends on the Dory list and how they want to play it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I'm kind of excited about Dash, the at least the Tree Fog Dash, I think it's what people call it.
Mm-hmm.
That list of Dash is gonna be improved by Dromai leaving because you
Yeah.
know I don't have to deal with them playing a Marigai and a Chromai and two more dragons and me having to use my whole turn to just pop it. It's like I'm kind of glad Dromai's leaving. I hate that matchup.
Yeah, that's fair. I think a lot of people are happy for that. And yeah, I think honestly, like no matter how you want to build Dash, you're gonna have a better time without Dromai in the format. And I did see a number of dashes. Like there was no dashes in top eight at PT, but I did see like dashes in the top 32, top 64, kind of. I played like three dashes at the PT. One of them was an early round, but two of them were like late into day two. It might have even been my last two rounds of day two were both dashes, something like that. So yeah, I think Dash is going to do well. And final deck I'll shout out Bolton. I have a little bit of a question mark about Bolton. I feel like the Warriors might be hard, and if Dory and Kasai ramp up, then Bolton needs to find a way to deal with those decks. But if you can, I think that Bolton like could be a top tier contender. Um, he had very, very, very impressive results at the PT. There was only like 10 Boltons though, so it's small sample size, but I think he was like the best performing deck win percentage wise and had like there was like a number of Boltons at top tables for quite a long time. And I think even into like the last rounds, there was like Boltons that did very, very, very well. So I think there may be something there to the deck. I don't know if it was just like mixed format, small sample size, and like the Boltons happen to do well, but I think you have like a good KO matchup. I think if you tech for Kano, you can be fine. Your Guardian matchup's okay, and you lost Dromai, which was one of your hardest matchups. So again, kind of same theme of like if you had a really bad matchup into Dromai and you were kind of a relevant deck, you probably are a fair bit better.
That's fair. That's super fair. Okay. Anything else you want to say about this PQ season before we wrap up the episode? It's a little bit of a shorter episode, but I feel like we talked about everything that we wanted to for like the, you know, pre PQ season CC discussion.
Yeah, I think this should be another exciting PQ season. I think it will be a little bit narrower than the RTN season we had, just because the set has been out longer, and even though it's a new meta without Dromai, I think that like people are starting to understand what decks are strong. That being said, I think you can play a lot of stuff into this format, and I think it's like a really awesome season for people to participate in. I think that if there's a deck that you've been working on, you can probably play it and do well, which hasn't always been the case in Flesh and Blood. And I think that with Dromai leaving, that might be even more the case. Verdict's kind of out. We'll have to see how it plays out. But my guess is that it's going to be fairly open for the next little bit. Maybe not quite as open as the very start of heavy hitters, but yeah, I think there's a lot of decks that if you understand what you're doing, you have good game plans, you know your local meta, you can absolutely win an event, and that's a really good feeling. So I guess like if you're a listener and you're trying to figure out what do I play for PQ season, I think almost anything that you have reps on and feel confident in is a fine choice. Especially if it's like any of the decks that we mentioned. I think those are all good choices. I think there's lots of like other reasonable ones, like Katsu is a reasonable choice. I think Azalea is a reasonable choice. I think, I think there's like a lot of decks out there that you can justify. So yeah, exciting PQ season. I'm very curious to see how it plays out, and I'm also very excited for the new set. I think that it'll be interesting to see how Part the Mistveil shakes things up.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Part the Misspell too. There's oh, I guess before we wrap it up, Part the Misspell, I'm not sure if this is correct, but I was reading the spoiler cards for Part the Misspell, and it said the reminder text in the legendary text on the Part the Misspell card says you may have one Sacred Art Immortal Lunar Shine in a constructed deck. So does this mean that if we open multiple Sacred Art Immortal Lunar Shrines in draft or limited, can we play multiple legendary cards in our deck?
That's a great question. I hadn't even picked up on that difference. We'll have to see. We'll need to get the comprehensive rules on that to know for sure. In the past, it was always that you could only ever play one legendary, but yeah, maybe. The cards seem pretty interesting. If you can play multiples, it seems quite powerful. I'm curious what Transcended is. We know that there's some cards that care about being transcended. Like we saw like the 1 for 3 assassin attack reaction, where if you're transcended, it's a 1 for 5, which is like pretty crazy. Um, my theory for right now is I kind of think that when you're transcended, you like maybe your pitch is like the chi stuff, and you can use your hero abilities, since like the the instants all seem to synergize with the hero abilities. Like the ninja one makes a bunch of crouching tigers. The assassin one lets you like banish cards from your opponent's discard that you can then play for free. The illusionist one like puts counters on your auras or something like this. So I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that change because like for limited, the worst feeling in Monarch draft was opening Soul Reaping and then getting past Soul Reaping. So if you can play multiple copies of these legendary cards, I would love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was always slightly awkward where you're like, I'm in the open lane, but it's like too open question mark. Not actually, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's like, pack distribution, something something. Man, I hate this rule, something something. It's like it easily didn't need to have, like they could have just made legendary only for constructed in the first place. Like obviously it would be too powerful and limited, but like, like what it's not like every draft you're gonna see somebody with like a double soul reaping deck anyways, so it's like, I feel like let me play with my broken piles.
Yeah, I also feel like legendaries could be non-legendary and limited, probably, but We'll see. We'll see. That would be an interesting change for sure.
Okay, then do you want to just wrap it up, Yuki?
Yeah, sounds good. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this show, and I hope that it helps give you some ideas of what you might want to play at your PQs. Best of luck to all of you at PQ season. Let us know how it goes. And if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out to us. You can ask us questions via Patreon. We have gotten a number of patron questions of the week that we've answered on the show, and we always really appreciate those. They make for great discussions. If you want to contribute questions, check out the Patreon Discord. You can also reach out to us via social media. I'm at Yuki Bender on Twitter, and Jay is at Ueda J. And we also have an email on the bobble at gmail.com where you can send questions and feedback directly there if you would like to do that. So yeah, that's going to wrap us up. As always, thanks for listening and hope you have a good rest of your day.